Hello guys, welcome to Daddy Share Space Daily. So we have completed our exercise now for up to about, I guess it's like 32, 34 days, something like that, since September 2nd. So we're doing pretty good as far as that. Trying to manage the multiple videos is becoming quite cumbersome. And when I say multiple videos, I mean like doing build videos, doing the daily Daddy Share Space Daily, and then also like, you know, unboxing type videos. What I'm gonna do going forward, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm gonna, think about that. The Daddy Share Space Daily portion is really there so that I can, just talk about, it gives the viewer the opportunity to kind of get to know my personality a little bit more. And then people can choose to, support or not. It seems like with each passing day, life is getting to be a lot more difficult, if you will. By that I mean like everything is going up in cost. Everything is starting to become like some form of a subscription model. I actually take a little bit of solace in buying stuff like this where, I paid $29.99 for this and that's it. It's done. There's no subscription plan to this. There's no annual fees to this. And I really enjoy moving in the direction of doing DIY projects and finding things to occupy my time that don't require me to pay subscription fees or monthly payments. I still spend, my fair share of money, but the reality of the matter is I really like to feel empowered that if I choose to, if I say, okay, that's it, I'm done, then that's where everything ends. My wife and I have been talking about getting another car. Obviously the Saab has been down, but I've been telling her, let's just wait, because now's not the time to buy. This is a time where you could really get scammed in so many different ways. Personally, I don't know if I will ever buy a car with a payment ever again. I have done that at least, let me see, maybe 3 or 4 times earlier in my life. But as I got older and learned a little bit more about how to take care of a car through oil changes and tune-ups, it just doesn't seem like it's a very good use of money to have $400, $500, $600, $700, $800 going out of your account every month and then having to add full coverage insurance to that. It just doesn't seem like a wise decision to me. Now, because we still, live in the world and there's lots of different things that we can do with our funds, you can invest it, you can, buy real estate, things like this. But, nowadays, buying real estate can be a bit sketchy because of the high price that people may pay for it. I don't know if everybody sees it like this, but for myself personally, back a few years ago, when the prices were going up really high, but the interest rate was like only 2%, for me personally, I looked at that and I was like, it's not making sense, because a lot of people that, I was rubbing elbows with, they was talking about buying a home and things that I researched online, you see that, a $300,000 home would be selling for like $100,000 over that price. And because the bank valued that home at $300,000, then that means you had to come with that $100,000 plus whatever your down payment was, which is crazy. And there are a lot of people that went into their 401ks or into their, retirement savings in order to purchase a home. And, it's just, I don't know, it seemed very short-sighted, because if you have any kind of problem that comes up, whether it be not being able, the roof leaking, the air condition going out, or any kind of problem, or maybe a car issue, and you spent all your money just to obtain a home. I'm hearing, it seems like every day now, different stories of people that have lost their homes, whether it be to taxes or to insurance. And that's kind of disturbing to me. And I just keep wondering, like, why are we here and I can only speak for America, I can't speak for any other country. Why are we so easily deceived when it comes to things like financing our future and signing our name and signing away all of our flexibility? Now, I can't talk because I've had failure financially in my life as well, but I learned from it. And what I learned is, if you can't buy something cash and carry, there's only a few things that you should buy that aren't cash and carry, and that would be, obviously a home, because it's very, very difficult to buy a house cash and carry. But everything else, including a car, I don't know. I mean, you can't do anything if you have, like, say, a major medical issue that comes up that you may have to finance. That's out of your hands. But I'm talking about decisions that you can choose to make. I don't see at all any reason to, use credit cards that you can't pay off every month or every 2 weeks, or to take out a loan to do anything really. I mean, I don't know. I think in a lot of ways we kind of got to go backwards as far as to, I don't know, like maybe we have to just have a lower quality of life, when, as I gather all my tools and go down this path, I'm thinking about the fact of, okay, what if I fall in financial, ruin? Or what if I have something economical happen to me? What if I lost my job or something like that? I mean, God forbid, I hope that doesn't happen. But say I did, I think about, well, what would I do? And when I think about the way this world operates right now, or at least in America, okay, welfare is not an option. You can't really pay for a lot with a low wage job, and then there's a lot of people that are saying that they're applying for jobs over and over again and they're not getting hired. I was truly fortunate to have fallen into the career that I'm in, which is nursing. But I have to tell the truth. In 2008, I was riding my Yamaha R6 motorcycle down in LA. I got in an accident which caused me to have an injury that required surgery. And this was 2008, right after I secured a contract at, it's a hospital called California Medical Center, I think it is. It's downtown LA. I don't know if it's still called that. But I had secured a travel contract there, and it was a 4-month contract. And I was living in downtown LA in an apartment. And once I had that injury, and I didn't know I was as injured as I was, but when I went to go have my health physical, they told me that I couldn't lift over a certain amount of weight, and so that made me lose my contract. And during that time, I ended up going to have surgery, getting fixed up, which put me off for 30 days. And then when I tried to get back out into the workforce, it was like it is now, where even as a registered nurse who had a pretty good record in the industry, I couldn't find a job. I couldn't find a job, and I was out here in California at the time, and that was one of the times where I had to go back home to the Midwest, and I ended up getting a job, but I was off for almost a year, right? And, part of it was, chosen, because once I started to see that everything that I had built at that time was basically just being burned to the ground simply because, of an unforced error. Now, I learned a lot with that, in the sense that, a travel job is not as secure as a regular full-time job where you can, kind of have a little bit more protections. Because just to give another example, on the job that I work now, I ended up getting injured. I tore my labrum, and I was out for almost a year at that time because I had to have surgery a couple of times to get it repaired. But the difference was, because I had a regular job, I had, my sick time, I had my vacation time, and then, at least a difference from being in California to Kansas is the fact that they have this thing, like California disability, so you pay more taxes, but it gave me the ability to supplement my income so that I was able to survive for almost a year without going backwards economically. Whereas when I got injured down in LA, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any backup. I did have health insurance. That was not an issue. The issue was I didn't have any kind of protections through the travel company that I was working for to protect me for loss of income. As a matter of fact, I was always a person that worked multiple jobs back then. And so my main contract I lost out on, but I was doing what's called registry, which is where you work one day at a time at different facilities in the area. And I would work at places like USC Medical Center or UCLA to make up my shifts until, I finished paying for my apartment in downtown LA, because I had like a 6-month lease that I had to complete. So I had to do that, and I still had my home back in Kansas, and I also, had car payments and all of that. It basically was just like, a financial nightmare. And so that situation really taught me about, I did eventually obviously get a regular full-time job. But then I also, my mindset changed when it came to like housing. My mindset changed when it came to automobiles, because back then when that happened, I had, a car with a car payment. I had 2 motorcycle payments at the time, plus my home, plus my downtown apartment in LA. And so I was overextended. Plus I had credit card debt back then too, because I wasn't the same person that I am today. And I just learned that hard lesson after hitting rock bottom. And so on the way building back up, it's made me very gun shy about signing any contracts and really looking at the fine details and understanding that, hey, whatever you sign your name to, you better be able to pay it. I mean, even people like when you lease or rent, like if you rent a home or something like that, you have to look at it for what it is. Let's say you're paying $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 that you're guaranteeing your landlord for a year. And if you look at it from that standpoint, it looks a lot different than if you think that I can just afford my rent. It's $1,000. I can pay it. I make enough money. You have to think about the fact that because you signed your name on the dotted line, you need to understand that it's not just $1,000 that you signed up for. You don't know if you're going to have a car accident. You don't know if you're going to have a issue in your family. You don't know if you're going to lose your job. And so I think that as individuals, we really got to start looking at things in bigger blocks economically. And that's where, if you think about paying $700 a month for a car payment, you multiply that out, that is $8,400 a year. What could you do with $8,400 a year in your pocket? And that's not including one single drop of gas. That's not including car insurance that's going to be required for that. It's going to be a higher cost if you're doing full coverage versus liability. And then you also have to worry about, just going different places. Like I go to work every day, and there's been many a times where maybe I was in my truck, leaned back, to where a person couldn't see me. I'm just like resting my eyes or something. And I mean, countless times I hear boom, someone opening their car door hit my truck. Now my truck's pretty robust, so I haven't found any damage as of yet. But I would be really uptight about doing something like going to buy like a Tesla or a really expensive vehicle and driving it to work, only to have something like that happen. People are not always looking out for other people's property like that. So it just seems like such a waste of money to spend so much money on a vehicle that most of the time all you're doing is going from work, from home to work or to the grocery store. Maybe if you're a more social person, you may go out and about. But, I think you have to consider, if people around you are concerned about the car you're driving, you probably need to reevaluate the people that are in your circle. Because, when you start looking at long-term economic health, you really need to be mindful of the fact that when you can't pay those payments, those people that you're trying to live up to, they're not going to be there. They're not going to help you. And that's why, like for myself, it just created a shift in me. And it made me want to always think about, what is my contingency plan? Right now, if things go really, really bad for me, a contingency plan for me is to always have enough money to be able to, if I needed to buy like a piece of raw land, very cheap, probably not in California because nothing in California is cheap, and be able to have some funds to kind of start to develop my own type of homestead. Now, obviously, I don't hope for that outcome. That's not my goal to live under those circumstances. I think it would be cool to do it part-time. I think it would be cool if there was somewhere that I could drive like an hour or two away to tinker about on the weekends. I think that would be amazing. But it's not my goal to go live in the sticks. It's more so a mindset of understanding that the society that we live in, it's like running on a treadmill continually. And if you stumble, you will suffer greatly. This world is not forgiving for loss of job. It's not forgiving for loss of pay. It's not forgiving for injury, sickness, illness, car accidents, natural disasters. It's just not forgiving. So, and unfortunately, we're not a very connected society where we really interact with one another and care about one another. And so as a result, you're really on your own. I wish that it wasn't like that. But it is, if you probably 999 people out of 1,000 that you meet are going to be like opportunists. They're going to be people that are looking at you, measuring you up to try to see how they can leverage your abilities or your skills or money to propel them forward. It's not, unless you grew up in an environment where people are a lot more caring, a lot more loving, a lot more realistic. You basically, it's like dog eat dog out here. You're on your own. Your back is always to the wall, and you have to make good, sound decisions in order to stay afloat. Sometimes you're swimming strong, and other times you're just like dog paddling, just trying to hang on to get, to the next day. And I don't know about you, but I know in my life, I keep getting hit from all different directions and different angles with different life challenges, whether it be illness, whether it be some kind of, physical thing outside of, nothing in your body, but just different sets of circumstances. There's always a challenge somewhere. And I realized that, all you can do is manage this stuff. Try your best to make the best decision today and put one foot in front of the other. But I think that sometimes we get ahead of ourselves by doing things like signing for, material things that is a little bit out of our reach. I think that all of us, myself included, we have to kind of humble ourselves and stay within our range, stay within our areas. There are people that make more money than us. There are people that have a better quality of life than us. I don't think that there's any reason to go back and beat yourself up about it. I don't think that there's any reason to compare yourself to another person. I think that you have to find your own degree of success and live in that, thrive in that. I think a lot of times because I've gone back to rock bottom before, and it took many years to get to where I am today. Where, at one point in time I had student loan debt. At one point in time I had credit card debt, and, lots of things. I remember years ago when I first got wind of, paying off credit card debt, and I remember paying off like $10,000 worth of credit card debt in like 10 weeks or something. And then I was thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to get totally out of debt and I'm going to do this and that and the other. And then the circumstances that allowed me to do that, they shifted, and it didn't have anything to do with me. It was just the way that things happened. Like at that time, I had a buddy who lived in San Francisco, and he let me stay there, and I would pay him a portion of the rent, which would help me to be able to take the majority of my income and direct it towards paying my bills off. It was like, that was the first time that the light bulb woke me up about, get out of debt. And I remember I had gone back home to the Midwest, and I was hanging out, and I was about to go back out to do another string of travel contracts, and I was going to stay with my buddy at the time and do the same thing. and life circumstances changed. And while I was on my way driving out to California, I got a call, and the guy said, hey man, you're not gonna be able to stay with me for this reason or that reason. And it totally changed my financial budget. I had to go with the housing that the company offered, which basically drastically cut my pay, because it's either you get the money or you get some money in the housing. And so I remember, I was a lot younger then, so, sometimes you don't make the best decisions. But I remember sitting there thinking like, wow, I was paying $1,000 a week on my debts and still doing, some of the things that I wanted to do. And then with this shift, I went to only having like $300 left over a month after paying all my expenses. And it just was super frustrating. And I remember I made, one of the poor financial decisions, and that's when I went out and I bought that Yamaha R6. And I think at the time, because my credit was not that bad at that time, I think it was like $99 a month when I got that motorcycle or something like that. It was pretty cheap, but of course you got to pay insurance. And it's funny, I bought that motorcycle. I had it literally 1 week before someone tried to steal it. They cut the ignition out. I had to stop them. I've spoken about that in the past. And once I stopped them, I put the bike in the shop. It was in the shop for months, for several months. And I remember when I got it out of the shop, and it got vandalized in Mountain View, California. I moved down to LA. I had to fly up to San Francisco, ride public transportation down to Mountain View to pick the motorcycle up. Then I drove it from Mountain View, California, all the way down to LA. And I drove it to work a couple times when I was working at a hospital in the LA area. And then someone stopped in front of me on the highway. I hit the back of the car, landed on my back on the highway, which that's when I got injured. But then sometime later, I had a second accident on that same motorcycle, and that was when it went down, and I was like trying to cross traffic. I had just got off. I was working at UCLA at that time, and I tried to cross traffic. And when I went across, I noticed that all the cars that were going around the overpass had they were on the brake. So I tapped the brake, and next thing you know, everything just went silent, and the back wheel just kind of came around. And next thing you know, like I think my knee hit first, and I went down. The bike shot off probably about, like 10, maybe 15 feet off in one direction. The handlebar broke off. When I had picked the bike up, the crankcase was, pouring out oil, and I slid. I don't know how far, but I know I was like, somehow I ended up on my back, and I flew all the way up under the back of a car. Like my helmet got trapped underneath the car. Like I couldn't even get up at first. And the guy behind me, he said he thought I was dead, but I got up. He helped me pick up the motorcycle or whatever. And, at that time, now this is a motorcycle that I signed for a loan on. That at that point in time, I had not had access to that motorcycle for a complete 30 days. But yet I had paid probably like dang near 6 months worth of payments on that bike. And I hadn't even rode it. I didn't even have access to it for 30 days in that span of time before it was totaled. And so, there was a major, major, major financial misstep on my part. But how was I to know, at that time, that, okay, I bought this motorcycle, that somebody would try to steal it in a week? How would I know that it would be locked up in a shop for repair for months? How would I know that as soon as I got it back within, 3 weeks, that it was going to be damaged again? And then how would I know that within, a total of 6 months of ownership, that I would be in debt for that motorcycle, but not even have it? So it's because, even though I wrecked the bike, I didn't submit it like I was supposed to into, the insurance and all that stuff. For whatever reason, I was just a different person back then. I was just like, I'll just pay for it or whatever, because it was such a low payment. I didn't think there was that big of a deal. It may not have been $99. It may have been $200. I don't know. But the reality of the matter is, the LAPD came to my apartment in downtown LA, to see if I was still alive, and they towed the bike. and it ended up costing me even more money because, you know, in the Midwest, if you left a car on the side of the road, it would just get towed and you would never see it again. You would never hear anything about it. And I was, you know, pretty much fairly new to California. You know, I had come out here, but I had never had an issue where I left a vehicle on the side of the road. And I left a motorcycle there and they towed it. And I ended up getting a several $1,000 worth of bill for storage for that motorcycle. So it's just, you know, I've made my share of missteps, and that was one that I learned from. And so like now I'm super cash and carry guy. You know, it doesn't mean I don't buy cheap stuff. You know what I mean? This Festool table saw was like $2,000, but I only buy stuff that I can pay for cash now. That's just the way it is. Other than housing. Housing is a whole different animal. I mean, in my opinion, you can never really own a house anyway, because even if you pay a house off, don't pay them taxes, you'll find out what you own at that point. Same thing with your cars at the end of the day. You got to pay taxes and registration in perpetuity. So what do you own really? So it's kind of like being able to recognize when you're just throwing money away versus when you are making an investment into your future that's going to have some kind of positive repercussions. Like, you know, something like this simple ruler here. If I take care of this could be passed down from generation to generation, and it'll do the same thing for forever. You know, maybe not all the power tools, because, you know, things break, but certain things you just start to learn what has some value and what doesn't have value. And then the same thing is, this is just kind of off topic, but I was watching videos of this guy who's in Arizona. He lost his job and he only had a certain amount of cash, and he's basically built out a whole homestead in Arizona. And I watch people like that quite a bit, and I think about the fact that, okay, if that was to happen to me, what would make that task easier? Especially when you have a wife and kids, right? What would make it a little bit easier? What would make me more nimble? What would make me more flexible? What would make it to where basically if a lot of, you know, the shelter around me, if somehow I was to lose it and I was, you know, put in a bad situation, you know, or, you know, because remember, house taxes go up, house insurance goes up. You know, if you're a renter, rent goes up. You know, all these different things you have to be mindful of. And, you know, you can't get away from paying, you know, you can't get away from death. You can't get away from taxes. You're going to be paying something. That's just the way life is. But if you could think about, okay, if I buy raw land, that is the cheapest land to pay taxes on, right? And then, of course, you know, not in every state or in every city, there are places that are a lot less, a lot less restrictive. If you know, build your own structures, you know, the people in Arizona, you see them building houses out of straw, mud, and bottles, and, you know, all of these different things. And they're saving money on utilities. They're saving money on all kinds of different things through rain catchment. Now, rain catchment is illegal here in California, but I don't think it's irresponsible to be thinking. I mean, I guess in a way, I'm my own form of like a doomsday prepper, where you start thinking about, well, what if the grid goes down? What if this happens? You know, how would I build a shelter for my wife and kids? I mean, even if you look at some of these Home Depot shelters, and if you look at the price and you look very closely at the whole setup, like, you could build it for cheaper than what they're selling it. So if you were able to, you know, change your mindset and decide, you know what, instead of me going to the bar, instead of me, you know, I don't know, doing snowboarding, let me go and, you know, practice some, you know, carpentry skills. Let me go practice learning how to mess around with wood so that I know how to put things together. Now, if you do that, you're going to find out what I found out is that, you know, this woodworking area is very territorial. There are people that will tell you you don't belong or try to attack you. And, you know, I mean, I guess if you have thinner skin, then maybe that will have an effect. But, you know, like, reality, it's kind of, I look at it as like, is this high schoolish stuff, right? It's like when, you know, you used to say when you're kids, if sticks and stones would break my bones, then names would never hurt me, or some kind of phrase like that. I may have said it wrong. But it's like, no, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names can never hurt me. So it's like when people on the internet say, you know, hurtful or negative things or thumbs down or do this, I mean, it honestly, it doesn't change a gram of your weight. Go stand on the scale. You'll see it doesn't change anything. You know, the number one thing is to develop mental toughness, the ability to block out all the noise and to see your own vision, see what it is that you're trying to do. It doesn't matter if other people agree. If you're not breaking the law, it does not matter if even one person agrees with you. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you know, if you find joy in what you're doing, if you accomplish what you set out to do, it really doesn't matter what other people think of you or what they think or what they say. Because, you know, a lot of this, I'm a big fan of the Twilight Zone as far as shows. And there was an episode in there where this gentleman was playing cards and visiting with some of his friends, if you will. And they was joking with him because he was building a bomb shelter. And everybody was, you know, they was joking back and forth. And then all of a sudden over the radio waves, they was talking about this is the big one. There may be bombs dropped, so on and so forth. This is the end of everything. And at that moment, the guy that was prepared, that built the bomb shelter, he was like, okay, honey, let's go on down in our little shelter. But he only built it for him and his family. There was no room for anyone else. And the other two families was, you know, the men were like, hey, let us in, this and that and the other. And what came out was those people's true colors. You know, they started calling people by racial, you know, derogatory terms. They started to attack each other. And eventually what happened is they actually broke down the door to this man's bunker. And the bomb didn't get dropped. They weren't destroyed. But in the end, the two other gentlemen that were not prepared was kind of like, you know, half-hearted laughing like, oh, you know, we can go back to the way it was. And the gentleman in the bunker said, you know, in all honesty, you know, and he was reflecting on the fact that he saw their true colors. He was like, you know, I don't think we'll ever go back. I'm wondering if basically, even though the bomb didn't drop physically, that the metaphorical bomb that dropped, if it didn't destroy us all. And these are the mindsets that, you know, I think that are helpful to understand that there are a lot of people in this world that are unprepared, that are just smoking, drinking, laughing, having a good old time. They'll criticize you, they'll tear you down. But what are they preparing for? Are they preparing for danger? Are they preparing for trouble? Are they looking around the corner? Are they considering or thinking about things? You know, people take for granted what they have. Some people take for granted their job. Some people take for granted their family. Some people take for granted, you know, whether it be their children. Some people take for granted their freedom. And they play loosely with these things. And, you know, I would just like to encourage people, you know, to pay attention to your own goals. You know, think things through. Think about what is healthy for you. You know, I'm not talking about being selfish, but what I am saying is, you know, there's a difference between being selfish and being a fool. You know, you don't want to be a fool for people to basically just bleed you out in every possible way. You have to be, you know, it's best to surround yourself with good, positive, competent people that have a hunger and a desire to want to learn and grow. If you don't have that kind of energy, for me, you can't be around me in my personal life. You cannot be anywhere near me with any kind of mooching, lazy type behavior in my, you know, I'm talking about my personal life. You can't do anything like if you work a job and you happen to know people like that. You just have to work around them. But in like my personal day-to-day life, and I just don't tolerate it. I don't tolerate it one bit, and that's probably why I'm 50 and I don't have not one friend. I don't have any friends. I don't subscribe to, you know, friendship, because I see friendship very much like relationship in the sense that, you know, I have one wife that I'm committed to, and she gets, you know, my all. My children get my all, and I'm not going to allow anyone into my space that's going to cause harm to my, you know, not willingly, that's going to cause harm to my wife or my children. And, you know, if people are out here in the world practicing, you know, foolishness, I'm not your judge. I'm not your judge, but I'm also not going to pay that bill for you. I'm also not going to be the one lifting you up when you fall on your face. I mean, I will advise, if you ask, I'll say, hey, I wouldn't recommend this, or I wouldn't do this, or I wouldn't do that. But after that, my hands are off. You know, I'm not going to, we can share our knowledge, we can share our experiences, but we can't, like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, right? I know people that, they could spend lots of money on alcohol, drugs, and partying and traveling all around the world, and yet they can't even use a screwdriver, right? If their car is making a noise or doesn't start, they have zero concept of what may be wrong. And living in ignorance is an expensive way to live. And I think that's the best way to wrap this video up is, I don't know everything. I don't know a lot of things. I don't know much. But I do know that living in ignorance is very expensive. And so it's my desire to try to find things that link together that will hopefully be transferable to my children, that will make life a little bit more bearable, a little bit more tolerable, and give me a little bit more stability, because I know from the past decisions and choices that I've made, I know what it looks like to make shaky decisions. I know what it looks like when you go out and you buy motorcycles and you sign your life away. And I just understand. I understand. But we also live in a world where advertising reigns supreme. Advertising can get you to buy any and everything under the sun. But you have to determine for yourself what's important, what will be helpful to you, what will be useful to you. We all have to figure it out. And I'm here, just like you are, learning, trying to figure it out day after day. Anyways, guys, I know a lot of people probably won't like this video, and that's fine. Daddy Share Space Daily is just really a place for me to kind of unpack and share my ideas and share my thoughts. And I hope to hear comments back, because maybe there are a lot of things that I can't see or that I don't see, and I can just grow. And if there's something that I may have said or a perspective that I may have shared, then somebody else can grow. So, from the standpoint of interacting with people, from a safe space, if you will, I'll wrap it up by saying, there's been a couple times in my life, once with my wife and once, a long time ago, where we had gone to a restaurant. This is so many years ago. And we went to pay, and someone paid our bill for us, right? Those are good people. People that do stuff like that are good people, right? People that try to connect to you and try to siphon off things all the time, they try to, pocket watch you or try to get you to, you go to your job, work your hours, and when they do their budget, they're like including your wage into their monthly budget. Those are not so nice people. Those are not people that you really want to spend a lot of time around. And I don't. And unfortunately, a lot of people are like that. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you next time.